Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you've had a lovely week. This week I'm gonna get started on a segment that I've been wanting to start for a long time. It's called Therapy Thursdays. So I'm hoping to have a regular or semi-regular segment called Therapy Thursdays where we unpack, some heavy topics with a professional. And so I wanted to start it off this Thursday because I finally teed up some time with a professional in this space, Dr. Kathomi Gatwiri. I had recorded a session with her. She is based in Australia. She's a doctor in the professional sense and also in the sense of having completed a PhD. So she is more than qualified to discuss the topics that I want to discuss, and even more so, issues that affect us as Black people, as Africans, because she's a Kenyan. She understands the concept, she understands the context, she understands what it means to grow up in a Kenyan household. She understands what it means culturally, and I feel like that's really important in trying to unpack these issues. So I hope you enjoy the session. We will be covering a range of topics like childhood trauma, which is today's topic. We'll be covering generational trauma and in general things that affect us as Black people, as African people, and see how to navigate that space. So let me know what you think. I'll probably put a trigger warning here that these are heavy topics. I mean, the title is pretty much self-explanatory. It's going to be childhood trauma for today's episode. But so if you feel triggered by that topic, please take note that we will be discussing really heavy stuff. So make sure you're mentally and psychologically prepared if you're going to listen. But otherwise, please enjoy. I would love to hear what you guys think. I'd love to hear whether these things resonate with you, whether there's other topics you'd like us to cover. Please let me know in the comments below. And if you watch and it resonates with you, please share. Let's see if we can get to 1,000 subscribers by June. Thank you to everyone who subscribed. I really appreciate it. I just want us all to adult together and be successful. I saw a quote yesterday that said, "What is life about if it's not to make things easier for each other?" Something along those lines. And I completely agree. Like, let's help each other along this journey. We're on the same journey. It has the same conclusion for everyone. We may as well do it together. We may as well adult together. So dive into the episode. Let me know what you think. I'm really keen to hear your thoughts. You'll hear our thoughts, both Dr. Kathomi's and I, as we go along the video. So I would love to hear your thoughts as well in the comments below. And as usual, subscribe and hit the notification bell so that every time I upload a video, it will bing on your phone. Let's get into it. We have with us Dr. Kathomi Gatwiri, and today we're going to cover the topic of childhood trauma. So I will let Dr. Kathomi introduce herself, introduce her credentials and why she's qualified to talk about this, and specifically trauma concerning us as millennials, as Africans, young people in this generation, trying to figure out life, but not really knowing what's holding us back. So Dr. Kathomi, thank you so much for, agreeing to do this series with me. It's something I've always wanted to do, but have never known either how to package it or how to put it out there or how to start. And so I'm really happy that we're doing this because I feel like it's going to provide a lot of answers, a lot of aha moments. It's going to make a lot of people think beyond their current circumstances. And if it can help someone, seek help and get some healing.
Yeah, we win. My name is Kathomi. I'm Dr. Kathomi Gatwiri. You can call me Kathomi, and I'm based in Australia. I am a senior academic, and I'm also a psychotherapist by training.
Senior means she's a whole PhD. She's a doctor, okay?
Stop hyping me up. I might just not even eat supper tonight when it continues.
Okay.
So I research race and I research trauma. So I have heard some incredible stories from Black people across the world about, how they experience themselves living in a body that is constantly inferiorized by white supremacy. And really doesn't quite matter whether you live in a white, well, I think it matters if you live in a white dominated context, or even if you're based in Africa, because there's quite a lot of colonial and imperial baggage under which we have to unpack, and we can talk about that today. And I think it's under that big banner that we go into the conversation of childhood trauma, because a lot of our parents inherited a lot of trauma from colonialism, which we can talk a little bit about that today.
Okay.
So those are my credentials. So I run a clinic. Yeah, I teach full-time in the university. But I also founded my own clinic here, which is basically to respond to the racial trauma and the childhood trauma that I see is actually a crisis among Black people here. And most of my clients are actually Black people who are originally from Africa. So we've got loads to talk about.
For it, it's a crisis. It is a crisis.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me too. I mean, it's the deep joy of my life to continue having these conversations, because I know how much they transform our relationships with ourselves, but also our relationship with our parents, our relationships with our siblings, our relationships at work. And of course, it goes without saying, our relationship with our intimate partners, if that's the partner that we choose, and our relationship with how we parent our children, if you're a parent yourself. So it is interconnected into literally every aspect of our lives, in part of our relational bonds. So
as for me, I came I came to hear about topics like these, like generational trauma, childhood trauma, generational patterns, through someone called Iyanla Vanzant. Iyanla is a spiritual healer. I hope I'm getting her title right, but she's like a life coach, spiritual healer type.
I know her work.
And I came across her in 2010, I believe, when I was in Australia and heavily depressed. I was in my room. I had quit law school, and I was browsing Facebook, and someone had posted an interview that she did with Oprah. And from that interview, I did, like, everything she said was resonating with me so much. So I did a deep dive, found out she had a book, purchased her book, Piece from Broken Pieces. She has plenty other books. And that literally changed the way that I was looking at my life, because I was just like, I'm complaining about, a relationship gone wrong, where someone has gone through unimaginable things from me, but not only have they gotten over it, they've gone on to thrive and to help other people. That's the first sort of introduction I had to these really, really heavy topics, because I had never come across information about that my past or my parents' past or whatever could actually impact me. That's the first time I started consuming this material, and I've never stopped. And so,
because I think also in a Kenyan context, and thanks for sharing that, because I think in the Kenyan context, there's this, I don't want to call it a syndrome, but there's this obsession with the idea that we must not revisit the past. Always look into the future, You are not your past. And of course, a lot of that comes from our religious ideologies about God has settled your past. You now have to forge into the future with this hope and with this denial. So a lot of people are often
that. Don't you question anything.
And don't question stuff. And it's so ingrained in our culture and the way that we were parented, that a lot of us did not even know that we experienced childhood trauma, because it was so normalized in our family, in our schools, in our churches, we didn't even know what we were experiencing was trauma until we grew up and we were casually telling someone a story and they're like, that just sounds bad.
Yeah.
You know?
You think things are normal until you either live in another society or you talk to someone who is either qualified or you consume this material and you're like, oh my goodness. So
yes,
let's just get into it. What is childhood trauma? What is it?
So childhood trauma are experiences that we have in childhood that have contributed to the skewing of our schema. So when we are growing up, we rely on our parents to affirm us, you know, to validate us, to kind of mirror the kind of people that we are and the kind of people we want to become. And this is where we learn things like emotional regulation, we learn things like resilience, we learn about our identities. Basically, our parents, you know, or our original custodians or our original, you know, caregivers are the first guardians, are the first mirrors upon which we view ourselves in the world. So if our mirrors are broken, right, we are likely to view ourselves through a very broken lens. Or if we are not validated, affirmed, or if our experiences of humanizing us as children are absent or are done in a really painful, punitive way, we never really get to experience the curiosity of childhood, the joy of childhood.
In what way should we be affirmed as children or humanized? What does that mean? Let's break that down. What does that mean?
So children, first of all, do not know how to separate their emotions from their parent, from, you know, like if a child is angry, I'll give an example, they think everybody should be. They don't know that that emotion is theirs singularly, you know? So when a parent says, what are you angry about? It really disrupts their experience of the world because they go, but why are you not angry about it? Because they haven't learned that about enmeshment and the fact that people can have singular emotions, right? So when they're having emotions that are being denied by their parent or their caregiver, they get really confused. They go,
well, that just hit me in a way, because even now in my adult life, if I'm upset and say my friend is just here giggling and I'm upset, I'll be even more upset because I'll be like, can't you see that I'm upset?
Absolutely. And it's in those minute, sometimes overt or covert ways of our realities as children being denied or being invalidated that we are not affirmed. So a really conscious way of a parent responding to the emotions of a child would be to say, yeah, I see that you're really upset about that. That would be an upsetting thing for you. How can I, you know, respond to that? And really bringing the insight of a child. How would you like mommy to respond to that? You know, oh, I want us to go and get an ice cream. And then you can negotiate whether you're going to get an ice cream or whether you can get something healthier, and let the responses of being seen, being heard, and being understood really dominate and really cover the experience of that child-parent relationship. But what is the norm, or what is the norm in most household, is that concept of a child is not entitled to their emotions, and the emotions of the child, or the emotions of the parents, are often imposed on the child. So if a mother is angry, all of you, you know, mtalia kwa hiyo nyumba.
Yes.
You will know by the footsteps of your mother that you're all just about to just get what's coming to you. So the child doesn't learn how to know and trust their emotions, because all they got was this emotional and infilling from their parents. So when dad was angry, they felt fear. When mom was angry, they felt fear. So it's the feeling of the emotions of the parent into the child without really encouraging the child to trust their own emotions and to trust when they're sad, when they're upset, and to really encourage them to feel safe when they feel those things, that it is okay to feel angry, and still be safe. So a parent shouldn't be saying, oh, don't be sad, it's okay. No, it's not okay for that child. And don't say, don't be sad. It's say, it's okay to be sad. I can really appreciate why that would really hurt you, that so-and-so did not want to play and kick a footy with you, right?
So it's all about
that would be, acknowledgement and validation and affirming that experience would be deeply upsetting for a child. I can see why that would really upset you, that so-and-so didn't want to play with you, or he said something really mean to you. But mommy is here and you're safety for the child. Now, I don't know how anybody in our growing up was ever affirmed like that. We're like, if I see you crying, I will give you something to cry about, my friend.
Do you know what my parents used to do? I don't even know where they got this concept from. They used to say, if we beat you, you need to say thank you.
That's from the Bible.
Oh, that's where they got it from. Because I was like, why would I thank you for hurting me? Are you mad? And so I to be beaten.
It's because there's this sense, that's particularly, your parents Christian?
Yeah, spare the rod, spoil the child.
That's it, and a child who is not molded in the right way will, there's that verse in the Bible, show the child a way they should go, and once they grow up, they shall not depart from it. And there was this sense of, because I'm showing you the way, because I'm pruning you, you should be thanking me for actually shaping you, because I'm actually not hurting you, I'm pruning you, I am shaping you in the way that you should go. It's a deeply form of gaslighting a child. It is so harmful. So if there are any parents who are listening to that, don't do that.
What is gaslighting for people who don't know?
Gaslighting is denying someone else's reality and making them feel like they're crazy for having that experience. So for example, you say your parents beat you, and then they say, you need to thank me. Whereas the kid is like, hang on a minute, I'm literally swollen, I'm in pain, I am so angry, but I should be grateful. So can you see how that reality is inversed for the child? And they're made to feel crazy for actually feeling angry about the beating. And so it's that sense, gaslighting is that sense of someone making you feel crazy for having your reality as true. And so over time you start to question, is that me or just my usual crazy self? You start to just go, maybe that didn't happen. That's my crazy talk going there. Because when you're gaslighted a lot, you learn not to trust your judgment because you're made to feel that's just crazy talk.
Because you feel, oh my God, I'm the crazy one. So let me not even vocalize what I'm feeling because it is crazy.
I'm crazy here. It's and we'll talk about this some more. We can see how these experiences start to present themselves in adult relationships, where someone does something really weird, and then you say, that really hurt me. And they could say, no, I never did that. Why should you be upset about that? Or why is that upsetting you, And recreating this sense that your emotions and your feelings are not something you should trust. Therefore, by virtue of having that feeling and that emotion, something is wrong with you because you shouldn't be responding that way. You should be responding with gratitude for me hurting you.
So it's a pattern of invalidation since childhood.
Oh, totally.
Wow.
And you probably end up picking up partners who just continue that pattern because we pick the familiar. If you don't do this work, we gravitate towards the familiar.
Yeah.
You know, and if you've grown up in a household where you were gaslighted a lot as a kid, and where there was a lot of, you know, you had to do all these gymnastics to gain the approval of your parents, that's familiar to you, and that's your first love, and that's how you know love is presented to you.
You know, girls marry their father, or guys marry their mother, or whatever, because that's familiar to you. You've been raised in this environment, so therefore naturally, subconsciously, you're going to pick a partner who will mimic the environment you grew up in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's either that, or you pick a partner who can provide the things that your parents were never able to provide. So in one way or another, if you grew up in a really unsafe environment, your top priority might be, I'll never ever pick a partner who yells, you know, who does this. So in a way, you're still bringing your childhood experiences into your adult relationship, because you're actively trying not to choose your father, and you're actively trying not to choose your mother. So you are essentially bringing your childhood traumas and experiences to your adult relationship, because one day that partner will probably do something that reminds you of your childhood, and you'll be like, yeah, I'm out. Yeah, totally, I'm out. And you know, because you haven't learned how to regulate or to deal with those things in the context of how they work in adult relationships.
Yeah. Do we all have childhood trauma? And when I say all, I'm talking about us as millennials, Africans, Kenyans, who were pretty much raised the same. I don't know anyone who was raised with those affirmations. Maybe they're out there, I don't know. But, you know, when in discussions with my friends, even relatives and stuff, I don't know anyone who was raised with affirmations and their feelings being affirmed. All you had to do was be a good girl or good boy, study, be number one, nothing else mattered, or go to church. Nothing else really was in the purview of our parents. And I want to make it clear that this is not a session where we bash our parents or our parents' generation. We're just trying to learn and unpack, because even them, when you hear stories of how they were raised, you're just like, oh God, okay. So,
they did better for us in a way.
Yeah. So how does childhood trauma, do we all have it?
Look, I think it varies, because the question you asked about when you talk to your friends, your family, everybody you know, everybody is dealing with something.
Yeah.
So that tells you something. We are not okay.
We are not okay. We are so not okay. We're so not okay. And there's something profound that you posted, I think years ago, about the fact that we're beaten as kids in an African household, and then we grow up, and maybe we live in Australia where you can't beat your children, and you're like, but I was beaten and I'm okay. And you were like, no, we're not okay.
You're actually not okay. And there's a lot of, I think there are levels of trauma, you know, depending on how you experience it. Of course, trauma is experienced differently, you know. Some parents will be plain abusive, violent, hostile, and really damaging to your parents. And these acts of abuse will be very conscious and will be very deliberate. And I think that kind of trauma is felt differently by a child. And then there's other traumas which were kind of like parents unintentionally perpetuating their own pain and brokenness. You know, like your parents saying you should say thank you to me when I hit you. It sounds like in their head, they think that's a great idea. So they're not actively trying to gaslight you, or they're not trying to say, let's mess up with our kids' reality. You know, they're not sitting and deliberately doing that.
They're trying to do, they're trying to make sure I have better opportunities and I grow up to be better than them. But I think it's something that either was passed down from their parents, because I know that they're not intentionally sitting down and saying, let's mess up our children. They're thinking this is the best way we can direct our children. And
this is why being so conscious of different patterns that could damage children is so important, because you're right. I absolutely do not know anybody who is okay. What does that tell you? And I'm sure everybody who is watching this will be like, yeah, pretty messed up. And we are inviting people who just grew up in homes where they felt affirmed, loved, and this has carried on. Come and share the tips, you know, come and share your stories. We also love to hear parents who tried and did good and affirmed their children, and actually how that impacted you as an adult, and the kind of person you became, or the kind of partner you became, or the kind of parent you became. But I don't want to say everybody had childhood trauma, because I don't have the data or the statistics to prove that. But I want to say this is a massive crisis. And a lot of people have trauma even when they don't know they carry it. You know, so like you're saying, for you, it took a really big event of your life to know that the stuff you were carrying was actually predating the experience you're having at the moment. It was a long, you know, years of carrying a lot of, you know, family stuff and family thoughts and family ideas that were leading up to that moment. So unless you're working through this in therapy sometimes to actually work out the different ways in which you were really, what I say, your schema was kind of, you know, it's not really straight, kind of flawed, you know? And it takes work sometimes to just straighten it and to make sure that your schema is not, you know, damaged. Because in our schema is where we get our core identity and stories about who we are. So if the stories you consumed about yourself as a kid were flawed or deceptive or weird, you know, or abusive, you know, think about the identity that you create for yourself. And I want to be very clear and say, you can have trauma and still be a successful person. You can have trauma and be a good person. You can have trauma and be a good parent and be a good partner, but it still doesn't mean you're okay. You know, so there's a distinction between a good person, you know, a thriving person, a successful person, and actually how trauma is sitting in your body and how it's making you unwell in many other avenues of your life.
Okay, so how does this trauma manifest in our day-to-day lives as adults?
Subscribe!